Tonight, a Newsmax exclusive with First Lady Jill Biden. Newsmax host and champion of breast cancer awareness, Nancy Brinker, sat down with Jill Biden to discuss the Biden administration's effort to fight cancer through the Moonshot initiative. There are plenty of issues Americans disagree on, but fighting cancer is one battle that should have everyone on the same team. Before we get to the interview, let's welcome my colleague, former U.S. Ambassador to Hungary under President George W. Bush and former U.S. Chief of Protocol, as well as the host of Conversations with Nancy Brinker, Nancy Brinker.
Thank you, Jen. Nice to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Nice to see you, Nancy. You are the founder of the famed Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation and the Promise Fund of Florida, which seeks to reduce breast and cervical cancer. What is your personal connection to cancer?
Well, I lost my only sister, Susan Komen, to it in 1980. And before she died, she asked me to cure the disease. And then she asked me to make sure that everyone had access to the treatment and care and wanted people to live through this disease, as she knew clearly she wasn't, and she died at the age of 36. So for the rest of my life, I have dedicated it to fighting this disease, and now we're getting to the second promise I made her, which was to deal with the disparities that exist so that people who are under-resourced also have access to care and treatment.
Nancy, how did you make this connection with First Lady Jill Biden?
Well, we've been friends for, a long time, actually probably over 20 years. When I was living in Washington, in between serving as CEO of Susan Komen, I also served as ambassador to Hungary, and then later on as a chief of protocol in the White House. But the Bidens were always very interested in this issue and used to support the dinner the night before the Race for the Cure, the vice president's residence every year, and were very helpful, and I got to know them, and I admire their work very much.
Well, let's watch the interview with Jill Biden.
Welcome to Conversations. My guest today is First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, and we're here at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center in South Florida. Dr. Biden, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you join us today. Thanks. I know everybody here is at the center, and the purpose of your trip is to talk about cancer. Mm-hmm. So you and I and the president have known each other, I think, well over 20 years. I was looking back.
Yes, for sure.
And
for sure.
The pictures tell everything. And I think we first really met when we did our first Race for the Cure dinner at the vice president's residence. Yeah, and it was great.
In the tent.
Yeah, in the tent.
Yeah,
in the
I
tent.
remember that.
Yeah, well, you were always so hospitable there and wonderful, like you are now, I know. But what got you interested initially in the cause of defeating breast cancer?
Well, back in 1993, 4 of my friends got breast cancer at the exact same time.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, what can I do? And one of those friends died. The other 3 survived. And I thought, well, I'm not a medical doctor, but I am a teacher. I'm an educator. And so I developed a program called the Biden Breast Health Initiative, and we went into every school in the state of Delaware, and we talked to young girls about the importance of good health, good breast health. We took breast models so that they could feel what a lump could feel like. We talked to them about, not smoking, living healthy lifestyles, and so we ask them to then go home and talk to their moms and their grandmoms just to create awareness. Because, Nancy, as you well know, really prevention, early detection is the key. Because if you catch it early, you have so much better chance of surviving breast cancer.
Right. And we have so much better chance of actually treating people and almost curing them, because they 99% of the time will survive. So thank you for all you've done in that arena and many others. What can we do to encourage, though, more women to get mammograms?
Well, I think we just have to get out there. We have to, I think during the pandemic, people put off all their cancer screenings because they didn't want to go to clinics or hospitals. So now, the screenings have been way down, and we're trying to create awareness and say, get out there and make up for lost time. And so I think in the next couple months, you're going to see more cancers, the incidence, because more people are going back and they're realizing, gosh, I forgot to get my colonoscopy.
Right.
I didn't get my mammogram.
Right.
I didn't get my skin screening. So now, you know, people like you, Nancy, you're going around and saying, get out there, get back to normal, right?
Yes, and it's been really wonderful. In our case, we've navigated, treated, screened, educated almost 20,000 women of our large population of uninsured women in Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
But what's been so wonderful to see is that we will have so many people living normal lives, getting them through this and then getting them through the social determinants of care. So on the anniversary of JFK's Man on the Moon speech, the president announced the Cancer Moonshot. And it has a very ambitious goal, which is great for all of us who are advocates. But tell me about that. Why was this such a priority in your family?
Well, it started back when Joe was vice president, and I think and we lost our son to cancer, and I think through finding purpose, which was our Cancer Moonshot, that it helped me and it helped Joe sort of go on.
Sure.
And so we decided that we didn't want other families to go through what we had gone through. And Joe continued the Cancer Moonshot then when he became president, and to help families. And so he has put a lot of money into research. We've put a lot of money or a lot of time to break down silos, both nationally, so that doctors and scientists and researchers are now talking to one another. And this has been now a global effort. So I just went and met with researchers in Spain who had agreements with doctors here in the United States. So we have to create awareness. We have to work together. You know, Nancy, cancer is one of these issues. You know, it's not, you know, a red issue, a blue issue. Cancer affects every American family.
You are so right. You are so right. If it isn't in your immediate family, it's in your cousins or your sisters or your aunts.
Yes.
And you've just done an amazing job. Do you feel that your work personally is helping create less of a divide, a partisan divide in our country? I mean, you just basically said it. This is not a red or blue issue.
No.
It's a human issue.
Yes.
And has that, and I'm sure that's brought you a lot of enjoyment. I mean, as First Lady.
Well, it's unifying. I hope that, you know, cancer is such a terrible disease, but it is unifying people.
Right.
They're all coming together to say, yes, let's work with one another and let's reduce the incidence of cancer as we know it and change the face of cancer. So it just, like you said, it affects every American family.
So tell us what some of the goals are of the Moonshot and how you're reaching them.
Well, we're putting a lot more money into research. And like I said, my part of it, what I've been interested in is the navigators who help families through the journey. Because the worst thing in the world, and I've been through this with my son, with my sister, and with my mother and father. And when you hear the doctor say, you have cancer, it's like you freeze in time, right?
Yeah.
And you've been through this with your sister.
Yeah.
And you don't hear anything else. And so we need to help people and families navigate the system. Where are the good doctors? Where are the trials? What's this going to mean? As you go into survivorship of cancer, you know, what therapies are available and what should you use? Chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, all these different things are all going to be new words to you. And so you need somebody to help walk you through that because it's so devastating. Just think of the social, financial impact, but most of all, the emotional toll that it takes, not just on the patient, but on the family as well.
And you're so right. If it's a loved one, and even if it's yourself, and I had, you know, breast cancer a few years after my sister died, and then a lot of families that happens, and it's genetic.
Yes,
in our
it's
case,
genetic.
you go through it all over again. But I think we all sort of have the same experience. You're right. It overtakes your life and your courage and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with big issues like cancer or the war in Ukraine, and you've already done a great job there with meeting the First Lady. How has faith helped you and the President get through these tough times?
Well, I think people, especially with our son Bo, I think people grieve differently. Joe leaned heavily into his faith, as has helped him get through the death of his first wife and baby daughter. I, on the other hand, I believed so fervently that Bo was going to live that it was just, I just didn't give up hope ever until he took his last breath. I just felt like Bo is going to survive this. And then when he died, it took me a long time I was angry and it really shocked me, and because I had prayed so hard for him to live. And so for, I think, I don't know, maybe over 2 years, I just had this empty, angry feeling. But then I was in a church in South Carolina. This is the most amazing thing. And a woman came up to me, a stranger, and she put her hand on my knee and she said, "Jill, I want to be your prayer partner."
Oh.
And I said, "Prayer partner?" I didn't know what that meant. Like, what's a prayer partner? And so I said, okay. And we started to pray together. We do it till this day. That was several years ago. And I felt like it was God's way of saying to me, "Okay, Jill, come back. Come back." And I did. And I think that now my faith has helped me. Certainly, Joe, like I said, kept his faith. But when Joe and I in this role, oftentimes we're comforting people, whether it's people in Ukraine in a war, whether it's people here in Florida who've undergone like the devastation of the hurricane or undergone a shooting in a school. You have to have faith, and you have to offer your prayers and faith to other people to help them on their journey of healing.
You're so right about that, and as you said so well, cancer is just something that scares people, literally to death sometimes. So does the Cancer Moonshot program include a component for reaching out to individuals facing economic hardships, or, as you said, your focus, and Kevin's, is also a lot about research? And how have you been able to bring people together, in other words, not to be afraid of the treatment, and then be able to educate them at the same time? Was there anything you've learned along the way, I'm sure you have, that you want to tell other people?
Well, I think that that you're never alone. I think, you are never alone. And there's a whole community of doctors, nurses, navigators who really put their arms around you and walk you through this journey. And from our perspective as an administration, one thing Joe has done is he has limited the costs on senior citizens who get cancer. He has capped, prescription drugs. So we've tried to help people in those ways. We've offered mental health support, which I think is so important to so many people, not only because of cancer, but also people who are struggling through the pandemic. I know my students in school, coming back to school. So really, there's help out there. It's just you have to, and that's why I'm traveling, this country so much, to say, you're not alone. We are all Americans. Joe and I understand what you're going through, and we want to reach out and help you.
And they reach back. Clearly, it resonates with a lot of people. You mentioned the idea of building partnerships and all of us working together. And you came to see the Promise Fund program.
Yes, you're doing such a great job.
Well, I think part of it is the federally qualified health care centers. A lot of people really don't know what they are. And the idea that we've been able to partner with the private sector, where people are willing to give donations, and then these wonderful federally qualified centers, and a lot of people in America don't even know they exist. That's what I was so surprised about.
And you're creating, I mean, you're going into communities of color that so need, you know, help with screenings and affordable screenings and screenings that they can get for free. I mean, it's, you know, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, coming from you, that means a lot. I can tell you that for sure.
Thanks, Nancy.
So, have you been, you look like you always are, but have you been enjoying your First Lady role and having the opportunity to have such impact? And you've really done that so well. I'm so proud when I watch you because it doesn't always come naturally to people. And it's not always easy to be a leader and to step out and say things that may create some discomfort. But are you enjoying that role? And
well, you know, Joe and I always say it has been our honor to be elected President and First Lady. And I have traveled, I think, over 40 states in the United States, and I get to meet people from all walks of life, you know, whether they're artists or educators or people in different communities, cultures, religions, and it's really been amazing to hear American stories, you know, hear everyone's story, and to realize, you know, we really are held together in America by our values as Americans. And I think that's what makes this country so great.
I couldn't agree with you more. Tell us how the meeting was in the Ukraine when you met with her and talking about hope and faith.
Yes.
It also makes us realize, how lucky we are to have health care in our country. But how would you measure the mood that you felt when you were in those meetings? And those?
It was, honestly, it was devastating. When I met with Elena Zelenska, you know, her demeanor, I mean, I think everything was weighing on her shoulders. And she said to me through an interpreter, you know, the people of my country need mental health. And she said, the children have seen such horrible things that have happened. Their schools bombed, their homes bombed, living in shelters. I went to a shelter and met with some of the mothers who were there because, of course, the men were all fighting the war. And they said, I can remember talking to one woman who said, Jill, you know, I was in this underground tunnel with my children. We had nothing to eat for 4 days. And finally, I had to go out and get something for my children. And she said, so I came out and people were lined up and to get bread, just to get a little bread. And she said, and then the Russian soldiers came and they shot everyone in the line. And she said, and she was just crying. And so we can't imagine this kind of horror, you know, in our country.
No, and we're still the symbol of the greatest free country in the world, and it's so
we have to fight for our democracy.
We do.
Absolutely.
And you know, that leads me to another question. The media platforms have so increased. I mean, you know, exponentially over the last 3 years, or last few years, or 3 years. And as First Lady, how do you deal with the intensity of all the media? Because every other day you're probably with a new set of issues and everything. And how is that? Has that been interesting, or does it sometimes feel like
I wouldn't call it interesting.
Who else is coming to talk to me? You know,
I don't know. I guess you learn to sort of take it in your stride. You have to. You can't be affected by the negativity of a lot of it. People just need to get rid of a lot of their anger. And just like I always say, come together. It's all about kindness.
Right.
You know, even if someone doesn't agree with you, if you can just talk to them civilly and hear their point of view, maybe you will never agree, but just acts of kindness toward your fellow Americans.
You're so right. And when I think of all the years growing up, and I think about the polio vaccine and the things that we were proud of our country doing.
So proud.
You know, and then we develop vaccines and we have all this, people don't like them, trust them or whatever. And I thought, oh, we should be so grateful. This is, we are so lucky to be Americans. And it still is the greatest country in the world. And you all have done a lot. I'm very happy that you've gotten to work on issues and be part of something that you know you're moving the boat forward. You really are. And what other things, I don't know whatever else the time you would have to do another, but what other are your interests now?
Oh my gosh.
You're in this
Well,
busy.
I just came from Fort Benning in Georgia, and I met with military families. And of course, I have my Joining Forces initiative, which helps military families, whatever they need help with. And right now I'm working on spousal employment because, you know, we need to get those spouses hired so that they have more income. And I'm also helping them with families with exceptional needs for their children. So that's one of the things. I met with the soldiers, I met with spouses, and it was such a great visit to see our military. You know, a lot of times only 1% of Americans serve in our military. And we think, oh, we're not at war. We don't have to worry about them or think about them. But remember, they are getting ready. I mean, they have to be ready for anything. And they're training. And we have to make sure that they have better housing and that they have, you know, the things that child care. I mean, they desperately need child care. So these are the things I'm working on, besides education, which you know I'm very
which you're very involved in. And, well, I guess, and the other thing that I think is that, and I know a lot of people agree with me, that by you taking on issues and appreciating our country, I hope it will continue to make a big impression with young people. It seems like so many young people don't want to serve our country. It always, I'm shocked.
It should be an honor, right? Because my dad served, and he was so proud of his service. And as are the men and women in the military now. So proud.
I just don't understand, and I'm so glad you're out there doing that, because it is so important for young people to be incentivized to do things. So how is it living in the White House? Have you... How am
I supposed to answer that?
A glass door.
It's you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful home, and they try. I think that the people who work there are just so amazing, because they know that, you know, they just try to make everything beautiful for you, and they do, and it's the people's house. So you know, every day it's full of tours and people, and we get to meet you know, school groups and. So come visit us, Nancy.
Well, I will. That's a great invitation. I'd love to. But thank you so much for taking the time today to be with me and to be with our audiences. And it's really wonderful to see you. Please come back to Florida. We need your help in a lot of areas. And it would be great. We love keeping up with you. And also, you know, what you're doing with the Moonshot. It is so admirable. And hopefully people will once again, kind of back to that citizenship, understand they can embrace big goals and actually make a difference. And I think that's what some of us have missed now. We've got to get that back into the minds and hearts of Americans, young, old, you know, midlife, whatever.
Well,
thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. And Joe and I, the president and I, will never stop fighting for American families.
I know.
So thank you for having me on today.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nancy Brinker, we were just watching your exclusive interview with First Lady Jill Biden. Nancy, cancer is an issue, of course, that impacts all Americans. It's important for Americans to cut through partisan hype on issues like cancer. So what was your takeaway after sitting down with the First Lady?
Well, my takeaway was that, you know, this is an earnest, ongoing issue with them. The Bidens, they had some tremendous loss. Beau Biden, who I had met a few times, had died of brain cancer, and it was devastating for them. President Biden's first wife had passed away, and 2 of the children, and it was so sad. And I worried, you worry about people. He was always very nice to work with when he was in the Senate, and many pieces of legislation had to pass. And we had a great center in between parties and everything in those days. And we got a lot done in cancer legislation. And cancer, as you said, it's not just a disease for some people. It's one of the leading killers of people now in the world. And so this requires a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and I'm just pleased to have friends like them who've worked this hard, and their Moonshot program is going to do a lot of good as well.
Do you think that the Moonshot initiative will have the support it will need at a time with so many competing priorities?
There are so many competing priorities, but there's hardly been any family in the world who has not been touched by cancer. We at the Promise Fund are so pleased about having, a large entity to deal with and to partner with, because in our county, in Palm Beach County, which is the 3rd largest county in the 3rd largest state, we have over 80,000 women who have no primary care. And because of that, we are working very hard to screen as many of them early as we can, embrace well care, because trying to embrace end of care life is, I'm afraid, going to be out of the reach of many people because the treatments are so expensive and it's so difficult.
Nancy Brinker, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.